By 1899, the age of outlaws and gunslingers was at an end, and we've been mourning it ever since. Welcome to the Outlaw Haven, your home for Red Dead Redemption and the Wild West. I'm Sam,
I'm Zaya.
and today we are talking about Colter. If you're new here, so are we. This is only our second episode of the Outlaw Haven, where we will be doing deep dives on all things Red Dead Redemption. Today we are diving right into Chapter 1, discussing and analyzing Colter from beginning to end. So sit back, relax, grab some snacks, and let's get right into it. So, getting right into it, we start out in a snowstorm. Swanson tells Dutch that Abigail says Davy is dying. Dutch says Arthur's out looking, he sent him up ahead. Hosea says, if we don't stop soon, we'll all be dying. This weather, it's May. I'm just hoping the law got as lost as we did. They find Arthur. We get this dramatic glimpse of Arthur.
Very dramatic.
Very dramatic. Lifts his
But he's
hat.
the protagonist.
He is the protagonist. And I just want to point out that, again, if you missed the first episode, there's going to be spoilers. It's an
Yes.
8-year-old game. At this point, click out of here if you're worried about spoilers.
Yep.
Go play the game.
Or the game.
What's taking you so long?
Do it. It's worth it.
Do it. Okay. Anyway, back into it. So we get our dramatic first glimpse of Arthur Morgan. And he says he found a place where we can get some shelter, let Davy rest while he, an old mining town abandoned, it ain't far. And then we see Chapter 1, Colter. Hosea walks into a cabin, gun in one hand, lantern in the other. Bill and Arthur carry in Davy, and everyone else piles inside. Abigail notices Davy's not breathing and listens to his chest. She says, Davy's dead. Susan's telling everyone to get a fire going and bringing in blankets and what they have in terms of food. Swanson says there's nothing more they could have done. They ask what they're going to do, and Dutch says, first of all, you're going to stay here, get yourselves warm. He sent John and Micah out scouting ahead, and he and Arthur are going to ride out and see if they can find some food. Says, I don't see what other choice we have. Then Dutch goes into his speech. And Dutch always has a speech.
Yep.
He always has a plan.
Most
His
of the time.
speech, listen to me, all of you, for a moment. Now we've had a bad couple of days. I love Davy, Jenny, Sean, Mac. They may be okay. We don't know. But we lost some folks. Now, if I could throw myself in the ground in their stead, I'd do it, gladly. But we were going to ride out, and we were going to find some food. Everybody, we're safe now. There ain't nobody following us through a storm like this one. And by the time they get here, well, we're going to be long gone. We've been through worse than this before. Mr. Pearson, Miss Grimshaw, I need you to turn this place into a camp. We may be here for a few days. Now, all of you, get yourselves warm. Stay strong. Stay with me. We ain't done yet. And then Dutch and Arthur leave the cabin. So I'm backing up to Dutch's speech a little bit here. He says he loved Davy, Jenny, Sean, and Mac. And when I was working on this script here, I thought it was kind of odd that he said Davy and then Jenny and Sean and then Mac. I mean, maybe that's just me being weird, I don't know, but I thought it was weird that he didn't say Davy and Mac together, considering
Yeah.
they're brothers, and everything they talk about with
Exactly.
Mac and Davy is Mac and Davy. They're, like, this,
Literally.
duo that we hear about, so hearing them separated like that was just kinda weird to me, like, now
And
that I'm analyzing it.
two, I guess the fact, I mean, I guess it isn't that weird considering Jenny is the only female of the group, at least in that sentence.
Yeah.
But the fact that she has only been with the gang for a very small amount of time,
Yeah,
um,
and
and
granted, like,
the others have
they
been.
know they have Davy, they don't know where Mac is, so I get why
Yeah.
there's that separation there, but I don't know why I found that to be odd, but then the other part I thought that, like, started getting me thinking is him saying, "Now, if I could throw myself in the ground in their stead, I'd do it gladly." Now that we know what we know about Dutch, which we're going to get into another episode where we really get into Dutch, but, I mean, if you're here and you've played the game, you know who Dutch is, and you know who Dutch becomes, and as we're doing all of this, like, right from the beginning, right out of the gate, like, Arthur's already doubting Dutch. He's already saying, like, "You sure, Dutch?" Like, when he says that, "We're gonna go right out and find food," he's like, "In this?" So, Arthur's already got doubts about Dutch, and then you read his journal about everything that happens in Blackwater. He talks about, like, the ferry job and everything with Micah and how they're all excited about this ferry job. He's already doubting Dutch before we even get into it. So, I mean, this kinda goes into the theories again, obviously, but the big theory that we're going to hit so many times is, when did Dutch lose it? Was it the trolley? Was it
No.
losing Annabelle? Like, was it losing Hosea? But the thing is, like, there's already conflict when Micah gets into the gang. There's conflict before we even hear the story.
And that too, considering that in later on in chapter 2, throughout, like, campfire conversations that you can miss, Micah and other gang members will kinda talk about how they got introduced to the gang, and it's always been Dutch saving them, but for Micah, Micah
Mm,
saved
yeah,
Dutch.
yeah, that's interesting. Where he says, like, "I'd throw myself in the ground in their stead, I'd do it gladly." Would he really? Or is he just trying to keep everyone
Right, because he
hooked?
only says
And that this is the only death where Dutch is, like, showing really any emotion about it. I mean, we see emotion when Hosea dies, obviously. Again, spoiler alerts. Help
right.
me here if you've not played the game. But, I mean, this part where he's talking about how they lost people feels way more genuine compared to, again, spoiler alert, when we lose Sean, there's nothing.
There's nothing, and sure, you could say part of that's because as soon as they get back
They're going
into
right into
camp,
getting Jack. I
you're
get
going
that.
in, but
But
it's like,
they
logistically,
never come back to it.
one, they never come back to it, but at the same time, it's like, technically, Sean's already buried at that point, but that's a whole fucking technical side of it, and it doesn't matter, it's a video game, who cares?
Yeah, yeah. But,
But
I
it's odd.
mean, it's odd, and just that part really sticks out now, knowing what we know about Dutch and who he is as a person, him saying that he would throw himself in the ground in their stead.
Yes, because I think he only says it 2 other times? 1 or 2 other times. Once in Horseshoe Overlook, in his speech about monkeys, and
Is
then
that a hidden dialogue? I haven't heard that one.
yeah, you can find his, speech notes. There's a wagon outside of Horseshoe Overlook that he has his speech notes written, and then he says that same exact speech outside, and
Wow.
I think Susan is the only one listening to it.
Wow.
Um,
We need to do an episode just on the hidden dialogue of this game.
yes, and
Um,
then I think he maybe goes into it again in chapter 6, but everything's fucking falling apart by then, and he's not good.
Saying a lot for someone who's described to have a silver tongue. Anyway,
God, that's not even getting into his romance.
oof, yeah. That we can hit on that more in the Dutch analyzing
Yes.
episode, but let's move on. So, Dutch and Arthur ride out, and we're gonna start rambling again here. Dutch and Arthur leave the cabin, and Arthur says, "Hey, I ain't had time to ask what really went down there on that boat." And Dutch just says, "We missed you. That's what happened. Come on." Do we want to get into what we think went down in Blackwater? Like, what do we know about Blackwater? Let's get into that.
Yeah. I mean,
So we
because
know that they get they get the money, everything's fine, and then out of nowhere, bullets. So we also know Dutch kills Heidi McCourt, a young mother, and we know he he holds her hostage, or like a as like a
at
shield.
gunpoint, yep, human shield.
He holds her at gunpoint as human shield while the Pinkertons are surrounding them, and he kills her. And sounds like he didn't need to kill her. Again, like, we can't really say that it was the trolley.
And at the same time, it's very intriguing because those who have played Red Dead 1 know of Heidi McCourt
Because of the strange
because
man.
of the strange man, and her death is described in such specifically
Very gory detail.
gory detail.
It is, like, the most specific gory detail description that we get in this entire series, I think.
Yes. Yeah,
It's
description-wise,
it's
by
nasty.
far. I mean, we see a lot of shit, but
We see a lot of shit, but, like, as far as, like, a character talking about something like that, that's
yeah, it's definitely the most vivid,
it is.
which also
So
says a lot about his character.
and then we hear that Charles burns his hand. We know that John gets shot, Davy gets shot, Jenny gets shot. I wanna know who Jenny was. Like, if we
Yes.
get a Red Dead 3, I wanna know who Jenny is. Is she similar to Sadie Adler? Because why is she on
Right.
this job
Yeah,
getting shot?
that is just it.
And then Hosea says she had some spark. So I'm curious who Jenny was.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's like, I'm assuming she was decently young. I mean, in at least in contrast to the other gang members,
Well, yeah,
because,
I
I mean,
mean,
you
she's described as
Lenny
little
was
Jenny.
sweet on her, and yeah, little
And Lenny
Jenny.
being sweet on her. Yeah, Lenny is sweet on her. Dutch and Arthur ride out, and they're just talking about the weather pretty much. And
Yep. Mm,
get to a point where Arthur has you have a choice between 2 questions to ask Dutch. One is, do you think it was a trap in Blackwater? Which, do we think it was a trap? I don't think it was. If there was that kind of money actually on board and they got the money, I don't think it was a trap,
right. It's like,
but
it's
they knew
interesting.
they were coming.
It's yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle with that because it's like, of
I think
course,
if it
we'll
was a
get
trap,
into
there wouldn't have
this.
been any money on it.
Exactly, but it's like, at the same time, and we'll get into this when we do, like, the Micah episode with, like, when exactly he started being a rat and whatnot. Spoiler alert, game's 8 years old, go play it. But it's it's interesting because if you choose, like, that option talking about Blackwater, Dutch does say that many men, "Oh, they knew we were coming,
Mhm.
but there was money on that boat."
It's so interesting. I don't think it would have been a trap if they would have had the money, but
No.
and what was the other option? So one is, do you think it was a trap? What's the other option?
What about the money, and was it a trap?
Okay. Okay. So what about the money? So the other option, what about the money? I mean, where do you think he buried it? Because he says he buried it, didn't he?
But yeah, they stashed what they could with their money in town, which is interesting that Dutch says with the rest of the money because, as we know, later in the game, he has his chest
Yeah, so
that
why
keeps all the money in.
did he bury all of their money? Like all of it? Rather than taking some with them? Why would he I mean, he wouldn't go back into town like, "Oh, hey, I know there's this bloody shootout, and
Right.
I'm just gonna bury some money in town real quick." Like,
Yeah, because it's
they
like, I
had to
see
have done it on their way out.
that's kind of what I think because I see a lot of people say that he buried the money under Greta's grave,
That's what I was gonna say.
but I don't know if I believe that because 1, that would be so obvious
Yeah.
for
Firstly,
the law
that's
to find.
very obvious, but that's also so close to town,
Yeah.
and they were in such a rush to leave. It's like, how did he have time to, like, just start digging a hole
Mhm.
to bury that kind of money?
Yeah, it's like part of me's thinking maybe, like, they ended up just tossing it into Flatiron.
That's interesting.
'Cause it's like, I feel like that's the only thing that I can logically think of, and then because it's like then too, thinking of, like, the route that they probably took up to get to Colter, it's like, they probably just went straight up and, like, not because well, there's no other big lakes or rivers
Right.
in West Elizabeth except for, the Basin and Olangila.
Right. We're talking a lot about Blackwater. Like, I know this chapter is about Colter, but there's just so much
I
that
feel like
goes on with like,
it's
this is
important.
all taking place right after everything happened in Blackwater, so the gang's
Mhm.
all shaken up about it. So this chapter is heavily on Blackwater, and there's a lot of theories about, like, what happened, so it's kind of hard not to get into it.
Mhm.
Then Dutch says, "Hey, I think I see something up ahead on the path." And he says, "You up ahead, who's there?" And Micah doesn't answer. He's just kind of there ominously in the fog.
Yep, he kind of waits. It's very interesting. Like,
And then Dutch says, "Micah."
yeah, he waits until he's announced instead of announcing himself.
Dutch says, "Found anything?" And Micah says, "I think so. I found a little homestead that away." Dutch says, "Anyone home?" "Sure, the place is blazing with light and noise. Sounded like a party." And Micah says, "How's Davy doing?" Dutch says, "He didn't make it, nor did little Jenny." Micah said, "That's too bad. Davy was a real fighter. Both of them calendar boys is, or was." That's so
Yeah, that is the thing. A lot of Micah lines, especially after like a gang member dies or something, he does backtalk
Mhm.
them a lot.
He does. And it's like, I know we're meant to hate him from the beginning, so
Yeah. I mean,
it's
by the
it's
end of
inevitable.
yeah.
Then Micah says, "And Mac and Sean?" Dutch says, "We don't know." Micah says, "Quite a business." And Dutch says, "I'm glad you're all right, Micah." And Arthur says, "Ask him if he's seen John." Which I had, like, a whole thought about that moment because Micah asks, "How's Davy doing?" Like, they're talking about Davy, Mac, and Sean and stuff, and then Arthur's the one who has to say, "Ask him if he's seen John." And it's kind of odd that Dutch doesn't think of that on his own.
Yeah.
Like, John was also shot. So he was shot in Blackwater, he's out in the mountains, who knows where, and already Dutch is not even thinking of him? But, like, he says,
Right.
like, he sent Micah and John out scouting ahead, which, by the way, is just strange to me, like, why did you send one of your injured men
Yeah.
scouting up ahead into a snowstorm?
Yeah, it is odd thinking about it because it's
Like, you couldn't
okay.
send Bill or Javier?
Yeah, it's like you can send Bill, you can send Javier, you can send Lenny.
Yeah, there's
Like,
so many other able-bodied men who could have gone out
yeah.
scouting, but why did you send John? I mean,
Especially when
he did,
was
he
that
got
through the
shot in the thigh.
yeah, I was gonna say it's like your
So,
arm.
you
But
sent
yeah,
one
you're
of your
sending a
injured men,
man.
which I'm sure John would have been the type to be like, "I can go." I mean,
Oh,
he's attacked by wolves
1,000%.
saying like, "You need me, John?" Or "Need me, Dutch?" "I was always ugly, Dutch." Like, he's definitely gonna be the one to be like, it's just a scratch, I'm fine." But
Mhm. I
regardless, you'd
mean,
think that
he literally does say it's just a scratch.
I know. But it's just odd that Dutch is, like, sending him out and not worried about him
Mhm.
already. And this is, like, before any of the bullshit happens in chapter 4,
Yeah.
where he starts really, like, having all these issues with him.
Mhm.
So, I don't know, that part has kinda stuck with me recently.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting.
so, anyway, getting back into it, Arthur gets the option to say, "You sure about this, or you run into anybody else?" And you run into anybody else, he says, "I reckon we're the only ones crazy enough to be out in this, Morgan." And Arthur says, "Well, don't talk to me about crazy." And Micah says, "Oh, so no, glad you're all right. I was worried, Micah. Look, it's all gonna work out, Morgan. We lost a few folks, but that's just how it goes sometimes." And Arthur says, "I'm glad you're feeling so good about it." And I think the other option is "Are you sure about this?" Micah starts talking about how everyone's sitting back at camp waiting for daddy to put food on the table or whatever. So, like, both lines are him already, like, talking about he, like, does not give a shit that there's less
Yeah.
people. Which you think with, like, how much Micah tends to kiss Dutch's ass, you think he'd
Very much.
act a little more upset? Even if he's not, you'd think he'd act a little bit more upset about losing these people instead of, like, blatantly saying, like, there's too many mouths to feed?
You're right.
I mean, I get he's been saying that for a while now before we even see this, he's been saying that since
Yeah.
Blackwater. Like, "Bro, you've been here for 10 minutes, shut the fuck up." But just an interesting line of thought there. So, skipping up ahead, we're riding up, looking down on the Adler's ranch. There's a party, you hear music, and we hitch the horses up, and Dutch goes in on foot and tells Micah and Arthur to stay low and stay hidden so they don't scare these folks. And Arthur's hiding in the cattle shed. Dutch is ringing the doorbell, or not ringing the doorbell. There was when
Yep.
was the doorbell invented?
Oh, no,
Anyway,
the Adlers didn't have one, though.
uh, Dutch starts yelling and asking for help, and some boys come out and they're talking, and then they recognize him. He said, "It's goddamn Dutch Vanderland," and talking about calm, and then it turns into a shootout. Shocker, another shootout with O'Driscolls.
But an interesting thing to note, or while Dutch is talking, trying to use that non-existent silver tongue, Micah notes that there's a body in the back of the wagon. Of course, soon after, we end up learning that it's Jake, and
Who
it's
we get to see
interesting.
in online, by the way. If
Yes.
anyone hasn't played
So good.
online, we get to see Jake Adler and work with him for a little bit. It's always
But
fun.
it's interesting because, like you were just saying, going off of how much, like, he is already an ass to people and, like, speaks ill of the dead and whatnot, he seems or tries to act so kind of concerned about the fact that, "Oh, there's a body in the wagon."
Yeah, he is very concerned about that corpse in the wagon. Like, he sounds legit, and it's like, "Come on, really? Micah? Okay. You're really that concerned about a body in a wagon?" But, I mean, I get it, they think that this is a house with, like, just a family partying, and now they realize that they aren't walking into rainbows and butterflies, so I get that. I wanna keep things moving.
Yeah.
So, we have this shootout, we get rid of all the O'Driscolls, and we search the cabin. We find the picture of Sadie and Jake, moving right along. We go outside and we search the barn, and one of the O'Driscolls just falls from the ceiling, and that person, we beat him up and interrogate him, but we get the option to spare him or kill him. And later on, if you decide to spare him, which a lot of people might not realize because everyone just kills him, if you spare him, you end up killing him anyway when you get to the O'Driscoll hideout. And when you find him, he says, "You should have killed me when you had the chance." Just a fun little detail that Rockstar threw into that that I think was really cool. And then we get the horse, which, I mean, I've never gotten the hidden dialogue where Sadie says that you can keep it, but this is Sadie and Jake's horse, not one of the O'Driscoll horses, which blew my mind when I
Mhm.
first learned this. Where I was like,
Which
Arthur's just stealing their horse and
Yeah, which is
riding it
interesting because
around.
it's like I have gotten that dialogue because it's if you, have a conversation with her, like, just in Colter, and it's interesting because Sadie does say that it's the O'Driscolls,
Does she
but
really?
in online yeah,
Oh, I thought she
um
said that, I thought she
mm-mm.
says, "You can keep it, I don't care if you kill it," or whatever.
Yeah,
She
that's
says,
why
like,
she
"Kill it
says
for all I
it.
care." But, like, no, that's Jake and Sadie's horse because you see
It's in
Jake
online.
online, and that horse is in that barn, so that's their horse.
Yeah, it's very
I don't know if
weird,
that's
definitely an
I
overthought.
yeah, that had to have just been oversight there. But anyway, Sadie starts screaming, and Micah says, "Look what I found in the cellar, wild thing, ain't you?" Dutch says, "Leave her alone," and says, I wasn't doing nothing. She's one of them O'Driscolls." And Dutch says, "No, she ain't, Micah. Look at her. Miss, are you?" And then, "Oh, you fool, Micah." And Micah knocks over the table with the lantern and starts a fire, and then they take Sadie back to camp. And Sadie starts crying, saying, "He was my husband," talking about the body in the wagon. You know what I think is strange? I just thought about this, and maybe it's just me being a sentimental weirdo, but I think it's odd that Sadie doesn't take the picture of her and Jake with her. She has a moment where she could grab it. She could.
I mean, at the same time,
I would have taken it.
you've been held hostage in your house for 2 days by
Honestly, if
O'Driscolls.
I'm leaving, I'm taking that. If that's
and
all
the
I have
house
left of
on
my husband
fire.
that I love that much,
Plus, she's
I'm
kind of
grabbing
being
that shit.
ushered out of the door
I'd be
by
like,
Dutch,
"Let me
too.
grab this real quick. Fuck you guys. I'm
But
grabbing
yeah,
the picture of my dead husband.
it
Suck
is
my dick."
odd because, like, they do go right by the fireplace.
They do. They go right by it. She could grab it, and she doesn't take it. I'm like, maybe it's too painful for her, but I mean, it was there. So I
I
don't know.
I think it kind of is because, like, she's that way too with, like, later on after you do one of the missions, her mission chapter 3, where you get the harmonica request, she's
Mhm.
even like, once you actually give it to her, she's like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna play it."
Right.
Like, it was very much something, like, only, her and him.
Right. All right. Skipping on ahead again. Abigail in the cabin. She says he ain't been seen
Whoa,
in
whoa, whoa,
days.
whoa,
Weather
whoa,
ain't let
hold
up.
on.
What? Did I miss something?
Before we get to that,
Oh.
during the end of that mission,
Okay.
while everyone's all talking and Susan's kind of telling each other telling everyone where their rooms are and whatnot. Dutch Jose and Arthur in one house, and then Bill, Lenny, Javier, and Micah in the other house. Micah shows his true colors.
Oh yeah, and he says, "How come Arthur gets a room and I get a bunk bed with Bill Williamson and a bunch of darkies?"
Mhm.
Got it.
Fuck that line.
Yeah, fuck that line. But so, Micah, you've been with them for 6 months, dude. Of course, you're gonna be
He
in
knows this.
the bunkhouse with all the other guys. Why would you get special treatment? Like, he
Yep.
really thinks that he's like Dutch's right hand man from the beginning.
Yes, he really does.
Yeah, I've always that. Ugh. I mean, obviously that line's just gross anyway, but like, it just doesn't sit right with me that he like. And you haven't earned your place. Like, meanwhile, we have that dialogue later in chapter 4 with Lenny, where Lenny is saying like Arthur's comfy here because he's in the house. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, and Arthur's sitting there saying like, you have to climb the ladder with everyone else. There's like a hierarchy in this gang, kind of.
Yeah.
And so he's talking about how Lenny hasn't earned it, but like Micah already acts entitled
Yeah.
when he hasn't even been there that long. Like, why would you get the same treatment as someone who's been there for 20 years?
Exactly.
Yeah, but obviously is always gonna be nasty.
Yes.
So, all right, do we want to get into the next chapter or the next mission?
Yeah, might as well.
Okay. So Abigail says he ain't been seen in days. Ain't let up. Till he says he's strong and he's smart. And Abigail says strong at least. And she sees Arthur, and Arthur says Abigail, like already sus. And Abigail says, "Arthur, how you doing?" And Arthur says, "Just fine, Abigail. And you?" And Abigail says, "I need you to I'm sorry. I'm sorry to ask, but." Arthur says, "It's little John. He's got himself caught into a scrape again." Abigail says, "He ain't been seen two days." So, I just wanna point something out here. Like, why why is this giving Mary Linton vibes? This is very deja vu to Mary Linton.
Kind of.
Kind of. I mean, it's her
I
asking
mean,
him to
I
go
guess,
find someone.
yeah.
It's like Mary Linton asking Arthur to go find his brother. Like, why is Arthur always like the search and rescue party? I don't know.
Because
It's just very, I don't know. Arthur says, "Your John will be fine. I mean, he may be as dumb as rock and as dull as rusted iron, but that ain't changing because he got caught in some snowstorm." Hosea says, "At least go take a look. Javier, we go right out with Arthur to take a look for John. You're the two best fit men we've got." Which, giving some credit to Bill here, is Bill not as fit? Like, what about Lenny? Two best fit men we've got? And why did they send John? If we have other
yeah,
better
it's
fit men, why did they send John to go scouting ahead? Again, we're back on that.
Mhm. Yep.
Just anyway, Hosea says, we're pretty worried about him. Javier says, "I know if the situation were reversed, he'd look for me.
Those who played Red Dead 1, if you know, you know.
If you know, you know." We will get into Red Dead 1 later, but
Yes.
yep. Yeah, that is definitely some foreshadowing there. Javier says, "Last I know, John was headed up the river," and Arthur says, "For all we know, he kept riding north and never looked back." Or Javier says, "You wouldn't leave, not like that." Arthur says, "Well, it wouldn't be the first time." So, was Javier not a part of the gang when John left? Like, we've
No,
written
he
out
would
this
have.
entire timeline, but the Javier part of it is always, like, a
Well,
mindfuck to me. He had to
it's
have been
kind
there, right?
it's a bit iffy because if we're going by the guidebook
Mhm.
and in the back, it says Abigail joined in 94, fell pregnant soon after. Javier joined in 95. So it's like technically this will fit in with like our whole theories. And of course one of the most popular ones,
I feel like this is
who
the
is
most
Jack's
popular
real
theory.
father?
That is the most popular theory.
By
Who is
far.
Jack's real father? And I swear it's Javier. Like, he looks just like him in Red Dead 1, but
Mhm.
he also
Red
does
Dead
look like
1.
Dutch, and he does look
Look at that
like John
schnoz,
sometimes, but
man.
and
He's got
I
the
I still
nose.
think that, like, little Jack looks just like Arthur.
Yes.
So, again, the
Dutch said
theories
we
are
all
all
had
there.
her.
Yep. I mean, Arthur's the one that says he should have married her.
Yep.
Anyway, let's get back into it. John and Javier are writing up, and they start talking about Blackwater again, which I'm not gonna get back into Blackwater again, we talked enough about that. But they talk about Blackwater again, and then they see smoke, they find a campfire, and then they find John up in the mountains, and they have to parkour to get to him, but they find him, they get him, and Arthur has to carry John all the way, like, back down the mountain a different way, which filming all of the scenes where they're carrying someone had to have been hilarious. I mean, I know they didn't actually carry each other, I know that much, but
Mm,
did
I
they
think
actually
they
carry s
I think they did.
I thought they used, like, a
I
I
don't
thought they used, like, a fake I thought they used a dummy
think
for that.
so. I think I
Did they actually have to carry each
might
other?
have seen I think for this scene at least,
Oh, wow.
because I think I seen I it was either Rob or Roger talking about it. Mm,
That's funny.
and I
I
think Roger was
God,
like,
I
"Yeah,
really wish
carrying
we
Rob, not
I
light."
really, really wish someone from Rockstar would have made bloopers and, like, shown us
Yeah.
behind the scenes of filming all of this. Like,
I would
that would have
pay
been so
so
good.
much money.
Same. I want behind the scenes of filming this so bad. But, mm, okay, they get Jonathan Mountain. I'm gonna have to kinda speed this up a little, but they get him down, they shoot the wolves, and obviously he is scratched up. We learn how John got his scars, which I know for you Red Dead 1 players before Red Dead 2, we're all excited to find out how he got his scars. You're
It's
like, "Eh."
definitely very interesting. I mean, it was okay, it was interesting, but yeah, I guess I mean, I never really put any thought into it.
Mm. My brother talked about it. He was like, "It's really cool to find out how John got his scars."
Mhm.
And anyway, they get him back to camp, and John is just kind of down and out for a while, getting morphine from Swanson. And then we get an option between 2 missions. We can either go hunting with Charles or we can go to the O'Driscoll hideout that we found out about in the first mission. And I know there's, like, a correct order to play all of the story missions, but I'm not entirely sure which I think the hunting one is next, actually.
It's yeah, it's Aftermath of Genesis and then Old Friends.
Okay. So, going into the hunting one with Charles, I mean, there's really
Mm,
not a whole lot to
honestly,
talk
there's not a whole lot
about. I mean,
aside from
we talk
I
about how
mean,
Charles burned his hand, which we did not talk about while they were in Blackwater a whole lot.
yeah,
So, there's
he did burn
obviously
his hand on something.
he burned his
We
hand
don't
and
know
says it
what.
was a stupid mistake.
Mm.
In my research, the likely suspect was burned it on, like, a steam
Smokestack?
smokestack thing. That's like a I don't know. I don't know words for things. You know this better than I do.
I don't know boats.
I don't know,
Uh,
but
but yeah, like Anyway,
But
he burned his hand on something. Otherwise, really in this mission, it's very straightforward. It's just
it's really just them hunting
you go
and
hunting with
Charles
Charles. I
Charles
mean,
teaching Arthur how to hunt, which I think is interesting though, is Charles is teaching Arthur how to hunt with the bow, which is yeah, that's one thing, like, that takes years of practice to master and all that, but he's also teaching him, like, if
how
you
to
use a
track the stuff.
rifle and, like, how to track and everything, which I get this is all tutorial. This whole Colter chapter is
Whole
tutorial,
chapter.
so I get that. But he grew up with Hosea. How is this
Mhm.
man so bad at hunting? And then, like, Hosea talks about it in a later mission that we'll get into when we get into chapter 2, when we have that episode, but he talks about, like, how Arthur obliterated a rabbit with a shotgun. Like, how is he so bad at hunting? And then, like, we get back from this mission, we get back from hunting the deer, and Pearson says, "Arthur's first real bit of hunting," or something, and I always knew you were a
Y
butcher. Yeah, like, he grew up with Hosea. It just kind of blows my mind that he'd be this bad at hunting.
yeah.
'Cause
And
he
it's interesting, speaking of Pearson, at the very beginning of the mission, he does talk about Blackwater again, but it's very much so, like, Pearson says that they only had a little bit of time
Mhm.
to grab the essentials,
Yeah.
and he didn't have enough time to get supplies in.
Great.
But then we see him going into the bottle at this point, not really having any food or anything. And Arthur goes on to tell Charles that he says, "We give the camp cook 15 minutes to grab the essentials."
10 minutes. He gives the
10
camp cook
minutes.
10 minutes to grab the essentials and go, and he doesn't even grab a crumb of food.
Yeah. And it's like, it's also just another interesting kind of tidbit, too, I feel like. Anyway, that mission's, yeah,
That's
normal
pretty
hunting.
straightforward, pretty
Cool.
normal, just tutorial stuff. Back to the, mission where we hunt the O'Driscolls. We go to their camp. And again, this is where we see the guy we spared him in the first mission. We see
Yep.
him.
Also, on the way up there, we will get into this when we do our Dutch deep dive.
We learn about Annabelle.
We learn about Annabelle, and it's a kind of our first bit of knowledge, like how this feud between Dutch and Colm started.
Right. Which we actually learned that they were almost like friends at one point. They've been swapping scores with them for forever.
Apparently.
Yeah. We'll get into that theory later. I want to talk more about Annabelle because I feel like as important this might be going into some theory territory here, but at the same time I feel like it's kind of important. We hear so much from Dutch about his darling Annabelle when he gets into talking about Calm, but no one else ever talks about her.
Yep. We hear
Except
Hosea talking about
except
Betsy.
yeah, the only time we hear anyone else talking about Annabelle, it's Mary Linton's little brother. He's the only one that says, "And Annabelle and Bessie," and Arthur says, "I'm afraid they're dead." Which I think Arthur might talk about Annabelle a little, but no one really talks
No, I
a
don't
whole
think
lot
so. I think that's the only
about her.
line.
And it's like,
Other
with as much as Hosea talks about Bessie, and I mean, he's talking about, like, memories that he has with her, he's talking about
Yeah.
I mean, we have pictures of her. We have a picture of Bessie. We know who Bessie was. Like, there's so much about Bessie,
And that
but
is just
Dutch
it.
only talks about Annabelle when it comes to Colm.
Yes.
The rest of the time, it's nothing, which
Yep.
I get, like, like, she's dead and gone, and he's moved on with Molly, but he also still takes every opportunity to talk about Annabelle. So,
Yeah.
my thing is, was he really that upset about Annabelle? I mean, we know he's kind of a sleazy douchebag because he starts hitting on Mary Beth, and I'm
Yep.
pretty sure he hits on someone else, and we know that he got with Abigail, so that's no secret that Dutch is for a man who preaches loyalty, he's not the most loyal to
No.
his women. So, was he actually this upset about losing Annabelle? Was that, like, his lost love and no one can compare? Or is it because he has, like he's, like, weaponizing it with Colm? Like, having some sort of, like
I think it's to a degree. Of
yeah,
course, we've talked about this a bunch, but I believe because Molly says it, Susan says it, Dutch always trades his women in for younger and younger women. So that's kind of what I'm thinking with Annabelle is she was getting up there
right.
in
So, did
age
he trade
and
Susan in for Annabelle and Annabelle in for was he
yeah,
gonna trade her in? Would
that's kind of
would
what I'm
they have
thinking.
even been together at this point if Annabelle was alive? I don't think they would be. I don't
I
think
don't
they'd
think
still be
they would
together.
be because it's like I feel like Dutch would be like was thinking about it, but I feel like that's also just because he was with her, and that's just it too. It's like he never fully makes the move, even like when he's flirting with like Mary Beth. It's like very specifically like the books and nothing else, really. I mean, that's kind of his thing with everybody is the books. But yeah, we can get into it deeper
We will definitely get more into
later
that when we get
on,
into
but
our
it is very
series
interesting.
episode, but that one is probably going to be kind of a recurring thing,
Give
wondering how he actually
Make her a
felt about
character in Red
Annabelle,
Dead
or
3.
if Annabelle was just a convenience
I
that he
need it.
could use as leverage or whatever. Yeah. We'll get into it
Need to see her
later.
in Red Dead 3.
Yeah, we do. Okay, so getting into the next mission, we're gonna skip ahead to where they get there. They start the shootout.
Shootout, I mean, it's a shootout. It's straightforward. It's just
There's
killing
so
Driscolls.
many of those. There's so
Um,
many of these shootouts, but
Back to camp. They come across one of the riders that was talking to Colm before they stormed the place. Arthur lassos takes him back to camp.
this is where we meet Kieran Duffy.
Yes.
And
And Dutch
again,
is
we're
just
gonna
kind of in disbelief.
I he's giddy about this.
Yes.
Dutch is so excited that they have an O'Driscoll in their camp. But I I mean, again, we're gonna get into this more when we do some like character breakdowns. Of all the characters that we lose in this game, I think Kieran's is the most like
Yes.
I mean, obviously brutal, but I think if I could save anyone, as much as I adore Sean and as much as I adore Hosea and Lenny, I wanna save Kieran because he
Yeah.
was just starting to, like, say that he felt, like, at home with these people.
Mhm.
And,
And
like,
that is just it. It's
what
like
could he have become if he would have stayed? Would he have had, like, some redemption arc because he was just such a
right.
whiny little dweeb in the beginning?
And it's like that is just it. It's like Sean and Hosea's death are so fucking vital.
Also, I mean, we're gonna get into this again later, but do you think Hosea had TB?
No,
You don't.
no.
I think he did.
Because well, this is even my gripe with I mean, the TB in the game. TB is an airborne illness. It's like it doesn't granted a lot of
So
it, yes, is spread through like saliva and shit, but there is like that small percentage of it being transferred just through the air. So I
which would
feel like
make me think even more so that Arthur got TB from Hosea and not Thomas Downs.
Thomas, but at the same time, it's like, okay, then it's also a very deliberate eat, like in the game too, of
Mhm.
Thomas coughing on Arthur.
I know. But maybe that's what they want us to think. Anyway, we get Kieran back to camp. Honestly, that's oh, well, we have to train.
Yeah,
We
we
learn
have to.
about Leviticus Cornwall. We get the plans for the train robbery at the O'Driscoll camp. And we stop the train. So Bill was supposed to blow the tracks for this train robbery, and that was gonna stop the train, and they were gonna get on and rob it. But then
Dynamite didn't
the
go off.
dynamite doesn't go off, and the train keeps going. So Lenny, Arthur, and Javier go to jump on the train, and Javier falls off, which I have played that mission so many times, and there were so many times where I was like, "Did I do that? Like, can I save Javier and keep him on the train?" But, like, no, that's just what it is. But
Oh, also to note, at the very beginning of this mission, a very small detail, but you oversee Mount Hagen, which is where
mm,
the game ends, which is great.
yeah,
It's one of my favorite little details.
it's
But
definitely
also, Dutch does call Arthur out on his doubting for the first
oh,
time.
what does he say? I can't remember. He
I'm
also calls him out on the
basically,
doubting, as they're walking down to the O'Driscoll camp too.
oh yeah,
So again, we're doubting him before we've even gotten to the trolley, the head injury,
yep,
or Jose's death or any of that. So,
yeah,
I'm
because it's like Arthur says, "I know you hate him, Dutch." Dutch says he's here for us. Arthur says, "I doubt that."
no, you're just
"No,
doubting
you're
me.
just
Yep,
doubting me. I would
yep,
never doubt you, Dutch. You always said revenge is a luxury we can't afford." And
alright,
then Dutch goes on to say, like, Colm always has had good information and whatnot.
right.
Yeah,
So,
we get in the train robbery. Another gunfight.
yeah, you think the dynamite not going off was on Bill or on Arthur?
Bill.
Arthur is the one who sets the charge or whatever, and he says, like, "Well, I set the charge, but don't tell him I said that," or something, whatever he says when
True.
he and Lenny jump on the train. So, I've always wondered that, like, whose fault was it? Who did
Right.
it? Who fucked up? But, so then this is, like, our also first look at Leviticus Cornwall, who
No, it doesn't.
what?
We don't get the first shot of him until,
Or not not well,
Sheeps and Goats.
this is our first, like, introduction to
I guess
Leviticus
yeah.
Cornwall. We see a picture of him on the train,
Sure, we do get a picture of him.
but this is,
Um,
like, our first, like, introduction to who he
yeah.
is,
This
and
is all, like, our first, like, big moment because this whole, like, scene of them outside the train, you can tell it was written for the trailer.
yeah,
Like I said, I'm a Dutch fan. Um, I have analyzed this man to no end.
we will have a whole episode just for this. I feel like
And
knowing you, it's gonna be a two-parter.
oh, yeah. But Dutch says M, feed him as need, feed him, blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
That's the last mission. That was the only other time uses M instead of them.
you would
And
notice that.
that whole, yeah, I would. But that entire train is constantly using that. So you can kind of tell,
That is
but
interesting,
yeah,
and it's
and
interesting that you would point that out.
yeah,
So then they
great scene.
find the letter. Do you remember what the letter says that's on Cornwall's desk in the train car?
No, I do not.
Because there's a letter there, but I can't pick it up. I don't know if it's glitched for everyone, but that is
Oh, yeah,
glitched
I
for
don't
me.
think you can pick it up.
You can. It gives you the option to pick it up, but every time I pick it
Oh,
up, he, like, picks up nothing, and then it just, like, keeps going. It gives me the option to pick it up again. So I just can't pick it up. It's been like that for a long time. I
weird.
That's just a glitch that I've had. I'm curious about what that letter says, though. So if anyone's listening to this and knows what it says, put it in the comments.
Right?
I'm sure you can probably find it online. But
Yeah.
so they break open the train, they find the bonds, and Dutch gives Arthur the option to kill him, leave him here, or take him with you on the train. Just make sure they send no folk after us. Talking about the men who were on the train. And that's like the second time we've had Dutch give us those options. And then, like, I don't think he ever does that ever again. Like, telling Arthur, "You can decide if you wanna kill him or leave him here or whatever."
Not really, but at the same time,
We
thinking
don't
about it, with Dutch specifically, we don't really have another situation like that.
I feel like I mean, maybe not, but I do find it kind of interesting, though, just because if you do let them go, which, I mean, it kind of goes the same way either way, but if you do let them go, it shows up in the newspaper in Valentine that the men rode back in on a train with no engineer or whatever. There's no conductor. So these men ride back in and say that the train was robbed. So part of me thinks that, like, because Arthur didn't deal with them, Arthur stopped giving him the option
Right.
because they said that they got robbed, and that's when Cornwall started funding the Pinkertons' search for them.
Right.
So, I don't know, that's just an interesting
Yeah.
thought that I had.
Notice that with the newspaper.
Yeah,
I usually kill them.
you would. You're a
Yeah.
menace.
I know.
That leads into very end of Colter. I think it's kind of funny that Susan says, "For Christ's sake, put that book away and go help Mary Beth," yelling at Mary Beth to put the book down and go help. I guess that's not that interesting. We know that Mary Beth is a bookworm, but
Yeah, I guess in a way it is kind of that they
it is.
start the cutscene on that instead of cutting straight to,
Mhm.
um, Arthur just saying, "We getting out of this hellhole."
Right. Yeah. It's kind of interesting that that's the one line we get before that. It
Mhm.
makes it feel like
I
it's more
mean,
important than it is.
right.
So, they're getting off the mountain. Dutch says, "We got money in our pockets. The worst is behind us, gentlemen. So the question is, where now?" Hosea says, "I know this country a little. I told you we should set up camp in Horseshoe Overlook near Valentine. We'll be able to hide out there no problem as long as we keep our noses clean." Dutch says, "Well, then let's go. Clean noses and everything else. Arthur, you're in that one. Bring Hosea. I know you two like talking about the good old days and what's gone wrong with old Dutch." So something that I've been thinking about is as they were, like, growing up, we know that Bill says that John is Dutch's pet.
Drunkenly.
Yeah, it's the drunken conversation, but I think Arthur was more close with Hosea.
Yes.
And again, this goes right back to why was he so bad at hunting? Why
Right,
was he so
and
bad
then
at
too,
hunting if he's, like,
it's
close with Hosea?
interesting because Arthur does say in his journal that Hosea has always been more of a father figure, so it's like, why
It
is he so.
feels like John was closer with Dutch and
Yep,
Arthur was closer with Hosea, but then why is Dutch sending John injured to go scouting when
right?
he has, like, 5 other able-bodied men to go.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Like, is he
Part of
Dutch's pet?
me
Or does Dutch, like, hate John from the start? Does he does Dutch hate John because John's the one who ended up with Abigail, and Abigail says that John is Jack's father?
ooh, maybe.
What if Dutch wanted to be Jack's father? God, I'm telling you that theory is gonna come up so many times.
So many
But
have to
okay,
do with
so
Connor.
I know, right? So Dutch sends Micah and Lenny riding up ahead. Again, we send people scouting up ahead, but why do Micah and Lenny end up in Strawberry if they're scouting ahead, coming off the mountains? They're not even going near Strawberry. So why did they end up in
No,
Strawberry? Well, we know why because it's
yeah.
Micah
I mean,
trying
I
to
guess in a
do Micah
way,
things, but it's interesting.
where
Why did they not
Dutch
go to Valentine?
cuts them off at, they're just crossing the river at the
Mhm.
waterfall there. So it's like, but even then, it's like, yeah, a little bit before. So it doesn't make it's not that unusual that they
It's
go to Strawberry,
but
I
I
guess.
I think it's strange because they just said they were going to Valentine.
Did they?
Yeah. Yeah, literally right before that, Hosea says, "We should set up camp near Horseshoe or in Horseshoe Overlook near Valentine. We can hide out there, no problem, as long as we keep our noses clean." Dutch says, "Lenny, Micah, over here." Micah says, "Yes, boss." And Dutch says, "You two right up ahead. Make sure there's no surprises. We've had enough of those." Micah says,
Right.
"Me with the boy?" Dutch says, "Just go." Micah
But
says,
that's
"Come on, kid, you
when
can buy me a whiskey." Which, again, come on, kid, you can buy me a whiskey. They're going to Valentine. Strawberry's a dry town.
true. True.
They know they're going to Valentine, so why did they end up in Strawberry?
Interesting.
And
Maybe he knew that
then
that
Lenny says that they run into a couple of boys in Strawberry. One of them Micah knew. And we'll get into that later when we get into chapter 2,
yeah,
but
with Norman.
it's I think it's weird that they went to Strawberry.
Huh. Yeah, I
Seems
guess I
really
never really
sus.
thought of that.
Anyway, then Arthur breaks the goddamn wheel. Javier says, "Do you need help?" And Jose says, "I reckon we can handle it." And they're riding to Horseshoe. It's just Charles, Arthur, and Hosea. And They see the Native Americans on the cliff, and Charles says if they wanted trouble, we wouldn't have seen them. Hosea says, poor bastards, we really screwed them over down here. Come on, let's not push our luck. Which, I mean, everyone should know at this point, but the three Native Americans we see at the top of the cliff are Eagle Flies, Rains Fall, and Peta. And that's like a big foreshadowing moment that
Yeah.
I feel like I overlooked for a long time.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
Um,
playthrough even when I was in before I realized that.
right? I had played through it way too many times before I realized it. I love that about this game though. Like there's so many times where like even 5200 hours into this game, I'm still finding things I never knew. I'm still finding new dialogue that I've never heard. It just feels like this game is so endless and it just like
Mhm.
adds so much to the immersiveness of it. Also, I think it is kind of another point of foreshadowing here where right after they get back on the wagon and get moving, Hosea asks Hosea, "What are you working on there?" Hosea says, "Just some yarrow and ginseng, good for the health, better than that stuff you buy in the store. Here, you can have all this. I'm at the point where I can do it with my eyes closed." And who goes out looking for ginseng with us in chapter 6,
True. I didn't even piece that together,
right?
even though I literally just did the mission.
Yeah, I just think that's interesting that he starts working on that right after we saw rains fall.
Yeah.
And it,
Uh,
like, really doesn't have much to do with anything. I just think of it as, like, tutorial, but it is interesting timing.
right.
So then they get into camp and, well, we hear about Charles talking about his backstory on the way to camp, which I'll save for when we get into an episode about Charles because I feel like that's another character that we could really do a whole episode on.
Yeah.
But they get back to camp. Dutch gives another speech. Dutch says, "Gentlemen, we have survived." Hosea says, "For now." Dutch says, "Now it's time to prosper." Hosea says, "Arthur and I were about to prosper in Blackwater. We were onto something big. Then Micah got you all excited about that ferry, and here we are." I feel like that kind of leans into the what we were talking about with how Dutch gets really excited about things in the moment.
Yes.
And yeah, I think I'm curious about like what that job would have been with Hosea and Arthur, like, if we could play that scene with Arthur in, like, Red Dead 3 or something.
Right.
I don't know. I'm curious about what that job was because of how much Arthur talks about it in his journal.
Yeah. Because wasn't it supposed to be like I think it was supposed to be like a bank
Real estate
scheme
scam.
or something, or yeah, real estate,
Mhm. And
and
I think
then
that's also interesting because I think Trelawney starts talking about doing real estate scams in chapter 3.
oh
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong on that. I'm pretty sure he does. Or there's something about it, like, when you go to get Trelawney back from the bounty hunters. You go
yeah,
into
he
his
talks about his
caravan,
like
he's got, like, a fake real estate card,
yeah,
real
I think
estate, like,
he for
insurance
like his
or
gold
something.
investment or something.
Mhm. Something like that. I don't know, I could be wrong on that, but then we have Dutch say, "We have all made mistakes over the years, Hosea, every last one of us, but I kept us together, kept us alive, kept the nooses off our neck." Hosea said, "I guess I'm just worried I ain't got that long, Dutch. I want folks safe before I go." We're kind of like be before it gets really nasty, but, like, it's already nasty at this point, like, it feels like
Mhm.
there's already tension between Dutch and Hosea at this point.
Yeah.
Hosea says, "Now we're stuck east of the Grizzlies and out of money, a long way, from our dream of virgin land in the West." Dutch says, "I know, my brother, but we are safe. We made a bit of money here make a bit of money here, and then we move again, head out around them, be west of Uncle Sam, in a few months buy some land." Hosea says, "I hope so." Dutch says, "Would you just look around you? This world has its constellations." Strauss says, "Gentlemen, I'm going to head into local town and, see if I can strike up a little business." And Dutch says, "Of course, Herr Strauss. I prefer robbing banks to usury. Seems more dignified somehow. Now, everyone put your tools down for a moment. Come on, gather round. Quickly now. I know that things have been tough, but we are safe now. We are far too poor, so it is time for everyone to get to work." Hosea says, "Get to work, but stay out of trouble. Remember, we are itinerant workers." Such as laid off when they shut down our factory to the north. Now get out there and see what you can find. Uncle, Reverend Swanson, no more passengers. It is time for everyone to earn their keep. I think it's funny that he says, Uncle, Reverend Swanson, no more passengers, but like one of the big characters that Micah bitches about is Molly. Just
Yeah.
observation there. But Hosea says there's a town up the way. Up the track, name of Valentine, livestock town, all mud and morons, if I remember right. Seems like a decent place to start. Pearson says, and we need food, real food. That means every day, one of you. But yet, Arthur's the only one doing any hunting, and he's apparently
Right.
never hunted a day in his life, even though he
Yeah.
grew up with Hosea. But okay. Anyway,
It's kind of interesting.
I mean, I think we do see in the ledger. I think someone says that they donated like a chipmunk or something, and it's like, oh,
Yeah, it's like, "Oh,
whoa.
wow, 10 cents. Thanks." But yeah, it's like they finish up, like, setting up camp. Susan again shows Arthur over to his tent, telling Dutch and Hosea theirs will be ready shortly, and then Arthur kind of complains about his money, and that's kind of it
Hosea says there's a bunch
for
of boys already in
yeah.
Valentine, Bill, Charles, and Javier, and Swanson found something near the down at the train station by the lake, apparently, and Strauss came back with that creepy little smile on his face. I'm sure there's a whole list of unfortunates he's forced money upon. And that's it for chapter 1. And I just want to say, if you're listening to this and you stopped and didn't finish the part where they get off the mountain, you didn't feel like playing it after the mountain, go play this game.
It is so good. This is where it gets good.
You just gotta
Gets
get through the
almost better.
tutorial. Chapter 1 is
Yep.
just a tutorial. So, obviously, there's gonna be stuff where we're like, "That doesn't make any sense," but it's like, it's a tutorial. So, like,
Mhm.
a lot of this
That
is
it's the essence.
it's yeah, like, this is just getting into it. So, obviously, like, chapter 2 is gonna be a lot more involved. So, like, that one's gonna have to be,
Yeah.
like, a two-parter.
That'll be a two-parter for I feel like all of them except for chapter 5 will be a two-parter.
I mean, even that blog is in 2 parts as it is anyway in the game. So,
Yeah.
that'll be 2 parts too. But, yeah, chapter 5 is Gorma. We're not gonna spend a whole lot of time on Gorma.
No.
So, at least for now, this was a good introduction into the game. Final thoughts?
It's a good game. Go play it if you haven't.
I think
Honestly.
as far as, like, chapter 1 goes, I think it's underrated. Like,
Honestly, yeah, it is.
people don't
It's
give it enough
good.
of a chance. Like, obviously, the snow sucked,
No.
but something about the mountains is just, like, peaceful in this game. Like, I love the music
Yes.
in the mountains, and, I mean, there's also, like, around Colter, we have, like, Lake Isabella, where we find the legendary bison, the legendary salmon, and then we have the white Arabian.
And
I mean, obviously, you can't find all of those in chapter 1 because you don't have a fishing pole, you haven't learned about the legendary animals, and you
Right.
can't get a different
And
horse. You can't even leave Colter.
yeah, otherwise,
If you
yeah,
leave
your horse is just
Colter,
gonna
your horse dies. So, again, it's just a tutorial chapter, so but it is an interesting area, and you can find Davy's grave
and Jenny's.
and Jenny's. Davy's grave is in the cemetery behind the church in Colter, and I think it's weird that Jenny is not buried there.
Yeah, I kinda
Why did
find
they
it weird.
bury she's, like, all the way up Spider Gorge, and it's like, why did she get buried so far away?
Yeah, because it's like, okay, you're telling me that you're gonna stop there for hours to bury a body.
Yeah, and, like, the ground would be so frozen anyway. Just
Mhm.
a side note, trying
Yeah,
to bury
let
a
alone
body and all of that would have been impossible, but
yeah,
I do think it's strange that they buried Jenny where they did, because they would have had to have come from the north, fleeing from
right.
Blackwater if they did that on the way, which at that point, like, you're almost to Colter, like, just keep going.
Yeah, that's just it. It's like Arthur would have known the distance.
It's a weird place to bury Jenny.
It's a very weird place.
That has always sat wrong with me. Like, the fact
Mhm.
that they didn't bury her in the cemetery with Davy is so weird.
Yeah, it is odd.
Anyway, I
Mm,
think that about does it for this chapter.
yeah, I think so.
Ready for our next one? The next one is going to be, like, not an in-depth breakdown of characters, but, like, just all of the characters in the gang, who they are, where they came from, their backstories, and then we'll do more deep dives into specific individual members of the gang, like Dutch,
Yep.
later on, but we wanted to do, like, a introduction of all of the gang members just so, like, if you are here without having played the game, you know who we're talking about. We get, like, a little introduction of who they all are, and I think it is important to, like, read their backstories and everything. So,
Yes.
before we continue, like, going off of the story itself and, like, deep diving into each chapter, we need to talk about the characters themselves.
Yes.
So that will be next. So stay tuned for that if you are still here.
If you're
And
thank you.
yeah. So that's it for us today. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here at the Outlaw Haven. It really means a lot to us. If you like what you heard, make sure you follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's coming next. I'm Sam,
I'm Zach.
and this is the Outlaw Haven.